Well, being the second Sunday of Advent today, let's, as we enter into worship, give an Advent-themed exhortation. Now, Advent remembers and celebrates everything that happened from Eve to Mary. Those two women are the bookends of Advent, and everything between them is what fills Advent. So last Sunday, we talked about how Advent teaches us to wait. Calendars are community memories, and we're remembering the long wait every Advent. We must have patience. After all, the season celebrates a 4,000-year wait from the promise given that one would come to destroy the devil's work, and the promise kept when that one came. But today I want to talk about another lesson of Advent, and that Advent teaches us the assurance of faith. The assurance of faith. And here's what I mean. When Adam and Eve sinned, Eve was told that a birth would happen, a seed would come, for Advent is all about births and waiting for them. And this seed, this birth, would bring forth one to destroy the work of the devil. Now, when Eve heard that and put her faith in that promise, she was saved by that faith and not by works, just like us. But notice, her faith was future-orientated, while a Christian faith is historically oriented. She looked forward to the child who would come. We look back to the child who came and died on a cross. Christmas and Easter, for that matter, are celebrations of a faith that looks back to a moment in history that happened. Advent celebrates the faith that must look forward to the Christ child who would come and to everything else that will come. So the Christian faith is that, to use a technical word, preterist. It is built on things God has done in the past, in time, and in space. It is preterist, for it comes from historical realities that can be marked on our calendar. Our faith is not good advice of things that must take place, but it is good news, gospel, of things that have taken place and have changed you and saved your soul. Our faith is preterist, from that Latin word preter, which means historical. But our faith is not wholly preterist. For while we look back to things, we also still await other things. We still await, like Eve had to await, like all the Old Testament saints had to await. We still await many promises yet to be fulfilled. There is still ahead of us a fullness of the kingdom for which we wait. There is still before us a promise of a second coming of Christ and a second Christmas to that degree. There is still in our future a place in heaven awaiting us. And after that, the resurrection of all things and the general resurrection of the dead, when all things are made new, including you. The kingdom of the Lord will come down and God will make his dwelling with us. That's future faith. Our faith, like Eve's faith, still needs to look forward. And we, like the woman in Proverbs 31, need to look to the future and laugh. So there is still much that we can learn from those Old Testament saints about how to have a faith that looks forward and looks forward with assurance that God will do what he said. Because in Scripture, faith is always future-oriented. Hope is built on what God has done in the past, but faith always has to look forward and trust. Here's how John Piper said it. Quote, "When I say that faith is scripturally, profoundly, and pervasively future-oriented, I don't mean that we experience faith in the future. No, faith is always experienced in the present. Faith is always experienced now. But when I say it is future-oriented, I mean that deep inside this present experience of faith, the heart pictures a future with a God who wins, who is so powerful and so wise and so loving and so satisfying that this future picturing faith experiences now assurance." So, Christian, What should each Advent season tell you? What should you learn from the Christian calendar during this part of the calendar? Well, this Advent, learn from the Old Testament saints how to have a deep, abiding, and patient assurance of all God has promised, that just as Christmas came, so the rest will come. And therefore, that reminds us that all of our anxieties, worries, uncertainties, and doubts about hypothetical futures are all out of place when we're looking at God's promises. That reminds us of our need to confess